Hello, and welcome to Mr. English Lab, the space where we improve our English skills while exploring real-life ideas that help us grow as people. I'm really happy that you're here today, because this episode is about something simple, yet deeply meaningful. It's about understanding your needs, wishes, and expectations. At first, these three words might sound like something from a self-help book or a psychology class. But the truth is, they're part of our everyday lives. Every choice you make, every conversation you have, every argument, every moment of peace, all of it is connected to your needs, your wishes, and your expectations. The problem is, most of us never stop to think about them. We wake up, go to work or school, take care of our responsibilities, and move through our days on autopilot. But how often do you pause and ask yourself, what do I really need right now? What am I wishing for? What am I expecting from myself, from others, or from life? When we don't ask these questions, we start to live by other people's expectations instead of our own. We might chase goals that don't truly matter to us. We might work harder and harder, yet still feel tired, empty, or unfulfilled. That's when stress builds up. That's when burnout begins. And that's when life starts to feel like a cycle instead of a journey. Why this matters for language learners. You might wonder, what does this have to do with learning English? Actually, a lot. When you understand your own needs and emotions, you also learn how to talk about them in English. You move beyond basic phrases like, I'm fine or I'm tired. You start to express yourself with more depth and honesty. For example, instead of saying, I'm tired, you might say, I'm feeling disconnected lately. Instead of, I'm okay, you could say, I wish I had more time for myself. Or, I'm trying to manage my expectations. These kinds of expressions make your English sound natural and emotionally intelligent. They help you connect with people in a more human way, not just through words, but through feelings. The cultural side. In some cultures, people are taught not to talk too openly about their personal needs or wishes. It might even feel selfish to say, I need time alone, or I want something different. In other cultures, being honest about your feelings is encouraged and respected. So this topic is also about reflecting on your cultural background. What did you learn growing up about expressing your needs? Are there beliefs you might want to question or change? Language and culture are always connected. When you learn new ways to express your emotions, you also expand your way of thinking about yourself and others. A gentle invitation. As we go through this topic, I want to invite you to be both a language learner and a life learner. Don't just focus on vocabulary or grammar. Pay attention to what you feel as you listen. If something touches you or makes you think, pause and take a note. You can even write a few reflections in your journal in English. That way, you're not only learning the language, you're learning about yourself. The goal. By the end of this episode, my hope is that you'll walk away with two things. Better English, more words and phrases to describe your emotional world. Better understanding, a clearer sense of what you need, what you wish for, and what you expect in your life. Because language isn't just about speaking. It's about connecting with others and with yourself. And once you start understanding your inner world, your outer world begins to change too. So take a deep breath. Relax. Let's begin this journey one word, one feeling, and one thought at a time. Let's talk about needs, wishes, and expectations. Let's unpack needs, wishes, and expectations, simplified and expanded version. Let's take a quiet moment to slow down and really unpack these three big words: needs, wishes, and expectations. We use them all the time, in everyday conversations, in our thoughts, in our arguments, even in our dreams, but most of the time, we don't stop to think about what they actually mean. When we finally pause and explore each one carefully, not just in theory, but in our real, daily lives, something powerful happens. Things start to make sense. We begin to understand why we feel the way we do. we start to see ourselves more clearly. 1. Needs, the foundation of your well-being. Let's start with the first and most basic one, needs. A need is something essential, something you must have in order to grow, stay balanced, and feel alive. Of course, we all know the physical needs: food, water, sleep, air. But there are also emotional and psychological needs, which are just as important. These include things like the need to feel safe, the need to feel seen and understood, the need to belong, to be valued, to feel that you matter. Needs are like oxygen. You don't think about them much when everything's fine, but the moment you don't have enough, everything feels wrong. You might feel tired all the time, unmotivated, anxious, or disconnected, even if, on the outside, your life looks perfectly okay. That's often a sign that one of your needs is not being met. And here's something important to remember. Unmet needs don't just disappear. They wait. They hide. Sometimes, they show up wearing different masks, like irritation, procrastination, or a general sense that something's missing. For example, if your need for rest isn't being met, you might find yourself snapping at people or avoiding work you normally enjoy. If your need for connection isn't met, you might scroll endlessly through social media, hoping for that small feeling of being noticed. So understanding your needs isn't just helpful, it's vital. It's the foundation. Without it, everything else, even success, money, or recognition, can feel shaky or unstable. Because if your core needs aren't taken care of, it's almost impossible to feel truly at peace. 2. Wishes, the stars that guide you. Now, let's move to the second one, wishes. If needs are your oxygen, wishes are your stars. They light up the distance. They give you direction, motivation, and a sense of wonder. A wish is something you want, something you dream about. It's not necessary for survival, but it adds color and beauty to life. Wishes are what make us imagine a better tomorrow. You might wish to change your career, travel the world, find love, build confidence, learn a new skill. Some wishes are small and quiet, like, I wish I had more time for myself. Others are big and bold, like, I wish I could start my own company. And not every wish becomes a goal, and that's okay. Some wishes stay in our hearts for years, simply reminding us what we value most. But here's where people often get stuck. We sometimes confuse wishes with needs. We start believing that we need success or need approval in order to feel worthy or loved. And when that happens, life starts to feel heavier and more complicated. Because when a wish turns into a false need, it adds pressure. We stop enjoying the journey and start chasing something that may never truly satisfy us. So, keep your wishes close. They are your inspiration, but also know which ones are needs and which ones are simply dreams guiding you forward. 3. Expectations, the hidden scripts. And finally, let's talk about the trickiest one, expectations. Expectations are not exactly what you want or need. They're what you believe should happen. They're shaped by your past experiences, your culture, your family, and even the media you consume. Expectations are like an invisible script running in your mind. You might not even notice it's there until reality doesn't match what you imagined, and suddenly you feel disappointed, angry, or let down. For example, you expect someone to text you back quickly, but they don't, and you feel ignored. You expect an event or meeting to go perfectly, but it doesn't, and you feel like a failure. You expect yourself to always be productive, and when you're not, you feel guilty. That's the power of expectations. They quietly shape how we see the world, how we see others, and how we treat ourselves. But here's the thing, expectations aren't bad. They help us set standards and boundaries. The problem only starts when they become rigid or unrealistic, when we expect life to always go our way, or people to always understand us, or ourselves to never make mistakes. Learning to see your expectations clearly is like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly, you understand why certain things upset you more than they should. You realize that disappointment doesn't always mean failure. It sometimes just means your expectations need adjusting. Wrapping up. So, when you take time to understand your needs, wishes, and expectations, you begin to see the deeper patterns in your life. You start to notice what truly matters to you, what gives you energy, and what drains it. This awareness is powerful. It helps you make better choices. It helps you communicate more honestly. And it helps you live with more clarity and peace. So maybe, before the day ends, take a few minutes to ask yourself, what do I really need right now? What do I wish for? And what am I expecting from myself, from others, from life? Because the moment you start answering those questions honestly, you begin to understand yourself on a whole new level. And that's where real growth and real language begins. Needs, wishes, and expectations, Part 3, Clarity and the Power of Understanding. Let's talk a little more about expectations. Expectations are tricky. They can sneak into your life quietly, almost like they slip in through the back door. They start shaping how you think, feel, and react before you even realize it. Now, expectations aren't bad by themselves. In fact, we need them to function. They help us plan, stay motivated, and prepare for the future. They allow us to imagine what's coming next and to set standards for ourselves and others. But the problem begins when our expectations become too rigid, when we believe life must go a certain way or people should behave exactly as we hope. That's when expectations stop guiding us and start trapping us. You might begin to measure your happiness not by what's actually happening in front of you, but by what you expected would happen. For example, you go to work, do your best, and hope your boss notices. But when they don't say, "Good job," you feel disappointed not because you did anything wrong, but because your expectation wasn't met. That's how sneaky expectations can be. Bringing it all together. So let's put the three ideas side by side. Needs are what sustain you. They keep you alive, balanced, and emotionally healthy. Wishes are what inspire you. They give you hope, motivation, and a sense of direction. Expectations are what you predict or sometimes demand from life, people, or yourself. These three are deeply connected, and that's where confusion often starts. For example, you might expect appreciation at work. But underneath that expectation might be a need to feel respected and valued. Or maybe you wish to be in a relationship. But if you look deeper, that wish might actually come from a need for emotional safety or from social expectations, that voice in your head saying, at this age, I should already be with someone. See how easily they overlap? Needs, wishes, and expectations often mix together, creating emotional confusion. But when you learn to separate them, when you start seeing what's a real need, what's a heartfelt wish, and what's just an assumption, that's when life becomes clearer. You become more empowered. You can prioritize what truly matters. You can dream freely without guilt. And you can face disappointments with compassion for yourself and for others. Because expectations are not facts. They're just beliefs, often temporary ones. When you see them for what they are, you become more flexible, calmer, and kinder to yourself. The English learning angle. Now, let's take a quick language detour. Did you notice how many abstract nouns appeared in this conversation? Words like belonging, safety, recognition, disappointment, fulfillment. These are not things you can see or touch, but they describe real, powerful emotional experiences. They give shape to your inner world. This is one of the most beautiful parts of learning English at a deeper level. You're not just learning how to describe what you do, I work, I study, I travel. You're learning how to express what you feel, what you hope for, and what you expect. That's what emotional fluency is, and it's just as important as grammatical fluency. Because the moment you can put your feelings into words, you gain power over them. You understand yourself better, and you can connect more genuinely with others. That's powerful. Change your career. Travel the world. Find love. Build confidence. Learn a new skill. Some wishes are small and quiet, like, I wish I had more time for myself. Others are big and bold, like, I wish I could start my own company. And not every wish becomes a goal, and that's okay. Some wishes stay in our hearts for years, simply reminding us what we value most. But here's where people often get stuck. We sometimes confuse wishes with needs. We start believing that we need success or need approval in order to feel worthy or loved. And when that happens, life starts to feel heavier and more complicated. Because when a wish turns into a false need, it adds pressure. We stop enjoying the journey and start chasing something that may never truly satisfy us. So, keep your wishes close. They are your inspiration, but also know which ones are needs and which ones are simply dreams guiding you forward. 3. Expectations, the hidden scripts. And finally, let's talk about the trickiest one, expectations. Expectations are not exactly what you want or need. They're what you believe should happen. They're shaped by your past experiences, your culture, your family, and even the media you consume. Expectations are like an invisible script running in your mind. You might not even notice it's there until reality doesn't match what you imagined, and suddenly you feel disappointed, angry, or let down. For example, you expect someone to text you back quickly, but they don't, and you feel ignored. You expect an event or meeting to go perfectly, but it doesn't, and you feel like a failure. You expect yourself to always be productive, and when you're not, you feel guilty. That's the power of expectations. They quietly shape how we see the world, how we see others, and how we treat ourselves. But here's the thing, expectations aren't bad. They help us set standards and boundaries. The problem only starts when they become rigid or unrealistic, when we expect life to always go our way, or people to always understand us, or ourselves to never make mistakes. Learning to see your expectations clearly is like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly, you understand why certain things upset you more than they should. You realize that disappointment doesn't always mean failure. It sometimes just means your expectations need adjusting. Wrapping up. So, when you take time to understand your needs, wishes, and expectations, you begin to see the deeper patterns in your life. You start to notice what truly matters to you, what gives you energy, and what drains it. This awareness is powerful. It helps you make better choices. It helps you communicate more honestly. And it helps you live with more clarity and peace. So maybe, before the day ends, take a few minutes to ask yourself, what do I really need right now? What do I wish for? And what am I expecting from myself, from others, from life? Because the moment you start answering those questions honestly, you begin to understand yourself on a whole new level. And that's where real growth and real language begins. Needs, wishes, and expectations, Part 3, Clarity and the Power of Understanding. Let's talk a little more about expectations. Expectations are tricky. They can sneak into your life quietly, almost like they slip in through the back door. They start shaping how you think, feel, and react before you even realize it. Now, expectations aren't bad by themselves. In fact, we need them to function. They help us plan, stay motivated, and prepare for the future. They allow us to imagine what's coming next and to set standards for ourselves and others. But the problem begins when our expectations become too rigid, when we believe life must go a certain way or people should behave exactly as we hope. That's when expectations stop guiding us and start trapping us. You might begin to measure your happiness not by what's actually happening in front of you, but by what you expected would happen. For example, you go to work, do your best, and hope your boss notices. But when they don't say, "Good job," you feel disappointed not because you did anything wrong, but because your expectation wasn't met. That's how sneaky expectations can be. Bringing it all together. So let's put the three ideas side by side. Needs are what sustain you. They keep you alive, balanced, and emotionally healthy. Wishes are what inspire you. They give you hope, motivation, and a sense of direction. Expectations are what you predict or sometimes demand from life, people, or yourself. These three are deeply connected, and that's where confusion often starts. For example, you might expect appreciation at work, but underneath that expectation might be a need to feel respected and valued. Or maybe you wish to be in a relationship. But if you look deeper, that wish might actually come from a need for emotional safety or from social expectations, that voice in your head saying, at this age, I should already be with someone. See how easily they overlap? Needs, wishes, and expectations often mix together, creating emotional confusion. But when you learn to separate them, when you start seeing what's a real need, what's a heartfelt wish, and what's just an assumption, that's when life becomes clearer. You become more empowered. You can prioritize what truly matters. You can dream freely without guilt. And you can face disappointments with compassion for yourself and for others. Because expectations are not facts. They're just beliefs, often temporary ones. When you see them for what they are, you become more flexible, calmer, and kinder to yourself. The English learning angle. Now, let's take a quick language detour. Did you notice how many abstract nouns appeared in this conversation? Words like belonging, safety, recognition, disappointment, fulfillment. These are not things you can see or touch, but they describe real, powerful emotional experiences. They give shape to your inner world. This is one of the most beautiful parts of learning English at a deeper level. You're not just learning how to describe what you do, I work, I study, I travel. You're learning how to express what you feel, what you hope for, and what you expect. That's what emotional fluency is, and it's just as important as grammatical fluency. Because the moment you can put your feelings into words, you gain power over them. You understand yourself better, and you can connect more genuinely with others. That's powerful. You take charge of your emotions. You move from confusion to communication. Instead of saying, I'm not okay, you can say, I'm feeling overwhelmed because I need more clarity. Instead of saying, I'm angry, you can say, I need to feel respected in this conversation. See the difference? You're not just describing the feeling, you're identifying the need behind it. And that changes everything. Because when you name your needs, you open the door to solutions, empathy, and understanding both in English and in life. Reflection. So here's a question for you to sit with. Which of your needs are being met right now and which ones aren't? Do you feel safe? Connected? Recognized? Fulfilled? And if not, what small steps could you take to start meeting those needs or to ask for help? Remember, you don't have to have all the answers right now. Sometimes awareness itself is the first step toward healing. Because true growth begins not when you have everything you want, but when you finally understand what you truly need. Emotional precision and the power of wishes. These kinds of phrases use what we call emotional precision, the ability to express your feelings and needs clearly, honestly, and compassionately. It's a skill that takes time to develop, not only in English, but even in your first language. But once you learn it, everything changes. Your communication becomes clearer, your relationships deepen, and your self-awareness expands. Collocations for talking about needs. As we explore this theme today, let's highlight a few common collocations related to needs. We often talk about meeting a need, fulfilling a need, identifying unmet needs, addressing basic needs. In more formal or professional contexts, you might hear, her emotional needs were being overlooked. His psychological needs were not being acknowledged. Notice something here. These are often in the passive voice. Why? Because we use the passive when the focus is on what happened, not necessarily who did it. For example, his need for support was completely dismissed. We don't say who dismissed it, that's not the point. The focus is on the emotional impact, the experience of being unseen. Using patterns like these will help you sound more fluent and natural, especially when you're talking about sensitive or abstract topics, subjects that live more in the heart than in the hands. Reflection. What's quietly asking for your attention? So before we move on, take a moment for reflection. What's one need in your life right now that's quietly asking for attention? Not shouting, not demanding, just softly waiting for you to notice it. Maybe it's the need for rest. Maybe it's the need for honest conversation. Or the need to feel more secure, accepted, or seen. Whatever it is, name it. Because once something is named, it can be understood. And once it's understood, it can be met. From needs to wishes. Now, let's shift our focus from what we need to survive to what we wish for in order to feel truly alive. If needs are the ground beneath your feet, then wishes are the sky above your head. Needs keep you rooted. Wishes help you rise. They represent the part of you that dreams, imagines, and reaches for what's next. Unlike needs, wishes aren't essential for survival, but they're essential for meaning. They carry hope. They give you direction. They connect you with possibility. The language of wishes. When we talk about wishes in English, we often use the subjunctive mood, a special structure used to express things that are not true, at least, not yet. You'll often hear, I wish I could. If only I had. For example, I wish I spoke Italian fluently. I wish I had taken more risks in my 20s. These aren't statements of fact. They're expressions of longing, a deeply human emotion. Longing shows that something inside you is reaching for something just out of reach. It's not about sadness. It's about desire, curiosity, and growth. A personal reflection. I remember a time, several years ago, when my life felt safe, but uninspiring. Every day looked more or less the same: work, commute, responsibilities. Nothing was wrong exactly, but nothing felt alive either. And then I started noticing a quiet, recurring thought. I wish I could work on something more meaningful. I wish I could build something of my own. That wish wasn't loud. It didn't demand immediate change. But it kept returning, like a song playing softly in the background of my life. And eventually, that whisper turned into a direction. I started taking small, intentional steps, and those steps led me toward something new, something fulfilling. That's the beauty of a wish. It doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be heard. Wish is what you hope for. It didn't happen overnight. But it started with one small thing, imagining a different future. And that's the quiet power of wishing. A wish gives you a place to begin. It doesn't have to be a plan or a promise. Sometimes, it's just a tiny spark, a thought that says, maybe things could be different. Of course, not every wish comes true. And that's where the tension lies. Because wishing often walks a fine line between reality and fantasy. You might wish to live by the ocean, to travel the world, to become famous, or to go back in time and undo a mistake. Some of those wishes might be realistic. Others might not. But even the ones that seem impossible still have meaning. They show you something about who you are and what you value. Every wish, realistic or not, tells a story. It reveals what you find beautiful, meaningful, or missing in your life. Think about it. If someone says, I wish I had more time, they're not just talking about hours on a clock. They're expressing a longing for balance, for peace, for space to breathe. If someone says, I wish I could speak freely at work, they're not just talking about communication. They're expressing a desire for safety, for authenticity, for the freedom to be themselves without fear. Even the small, casual wishes we whisper to ourselves, I wish I could sleep in tomorrow. I wish I were more confident. I wish I hadn't said that. These are not random thoughts. They're quiet messages from your inner self. They tell you what's missing, what's wanted, what's still alive inside you. The trap of conditional thinking. This is where another kind of thinking often sneaks in: conditional thinking. It sounds like this: if I had more money, I'd quit my job. If I lived somewhere else, I'd finally be happy. At first, these thoughts seem motivating, like a push toward a better life. But they can also become traps. Because if your happiness always depends on something external, on the perfect moment, the perfect condition, or the perfect version of you, then you might end up waiting forever. There's a fine line between envisioning a better life and postponing the life you already have. The purpose of wishing. Still, we all carry a collection of wishes within us. Some are bold and daring. Some are soft and secret. Some have been with us since childhood. And here's something important to remember: not every wish needs to come true in order to serve a purpose. Sometimes, the act of simply imagining a different or better version of your life can be energizing. It reminds you that change is possible, that you're not stuck, and that maybe, just maybe, the life you want is closer than it seems. But that only happens if you're willing to listen, really listen, to your own yearning. Wishing in English, emotional fluency. From a language point of view, expressing wishes is a beautiful and emotional part of English fluency. When you learn how to express a wish, you're not just practicing grammar, you're learning how to share your hopes, your regrets, and your deepest feelings. We often use two main structures for wishes in English. I wish I had, to talk about the past, about something you can't change. For example, I wish I had studied art instead of business. This is a kind of emotional storytelling, looking back with reflection. I wish I could, or I wish I were, to talk about the present, about something you want but don't have yet. For example, I wish I could travel more. I wish I were more confident. These are simple structures, but they carry deep emotion. They give voice to the quiet parts of yourself, the parts that imagine, dream, and hope. As your vocabulary grows, try replacing want or wish with more expressive verbs. You could say, I long for peace. I yearn for change. I dream of adventure. I envision a calmer life. These words don't just communicate information, they communicate feeling, texture, and sincerity. Reflection, the wish you haven't said out loud. So here's a gentle question for you. What's one wish you've been carrying quietly, maybe for years, but haven't fully acknowledged? Maybe it's a wish for a new direction in life. Maybe it's a wish for healing, to forgive someone, or even to forgive yourself. Maybe it's something creative, something brave, or something you've been afraid to admit you really want. Whatever it is, give yourself permission to imagine it. Not to plan it. Not to analyze it. Just to sit with it. Allow yourself to want it without guilt, without shame. Because wishing is not weakness. It's a form of self-recognition. It's how we begin to tell ourselves the truth about what we care about, even if we're not ready to act on it yet. Expectations, the invisible script. And now, let's move to the third part of this exploration: expectations. We all carry them. Sometimes we speak them out loud. Sometimes they live quietly in the background. But whether we're aware of them or not, expectations shape how we see the world, how we respond to others, and how we measure our own happiness. Theme: understanding expectations. Expectations are described as an invisible script, something silently influencing our behavior, emotions, and self-perception. Unlike needs, which are essential, or wishes, which inspire, expectations often constrain us without us realizing. Core ideas. Nature of expectations. They're internalized beliefs about how things should be, often shaped by culture, family, education, religion, or media. Examples. Success means financial security. Real men don't cry. You must always put others first. The power of should. The word should is subtle but heavy. Sentences like, I should be more productive, or by now I should have figured it out sound harmless, but create emotional pressure and a sense of inadequacy. Inherited expectations. They're not always consciously chosen, often handed down like a family heirloom. Example: a listener felt her worth depended on constant achievement, leading to exhaustion and self-doubt. Internal versus external expectations. External: society, work, relationships. You must perform, fit in, deliver. Internal: self-imposed standards. I should never fail. I should always be in control. Internal expectations can be the harshest, driven by perfectionism or comparison. Consequences. Unrealistic or conflicting expectations lead to stress, anxiety, guilt, and self-doubt. They create a painful gap between who we are and who we think we should be. Linguistic notes. Common grammatical markers of expectation include modals of obligation: should, must, have to, ought to, supposed to. Examples: you must be polite. I should exercise more. We're supposed to finish this by Friday. These modals subtly communicate pressure and judgment, both in self-talk and social expectations. Reflection prompt. To continue the tone, think about one expectation in your life that feels heavy or outdated. Where did it come from? Does it still serve you, or is it time to let it go? Internal dialogue, listening to your inner voice. So far, we've talked about needs, wishes, and expectations, three powerful forces that shape the way we live, think, and feel. Now, let's go a little deeper. Let's look at something even more personal: your internal dialogue, the voice inside your mind. You might not always notice it, but it's always there, commenting on what you do, reminding you of what you forgot, worrying about what might happen next, or replaying moments from the past. Sometimes it's gentle and supportive. Other times, it's critical and impatient. Think about it for a moment. What kind of tone does your inner voice usually use with you? Is it kind, like a friend who encourages you? Or is it harsh, like a strict teacher who's never satisfied? This inner conversation, the way you talk to yourself, has an enormous influence on your emotions, your confidence, and your behavior. It shapes how you make decisions and how you relate to other people. If your inner voice is constantly saying, you should be doing more, or you're not good enough, that message begins to sink in. It affects how you see yourself and how much you believe in your abilities. But if your inner voice says things like, you're learning, it's okay to take your time, or you did your best today, that also shapes your reality in a much healthier way. Because language doesn't just describe how we feel, it creates how we feel. The power of should. Earlier, we talked about how words like should, must, or have to carry pressure. They often come from expectations, from what we think the world demands of us. When you notice these words in your inner dialogue, try to pause. Ask yourself, where did that belief come from? Is it something I truly believe, or something I've inherited? Is it helping me grow, or is it holding me back? Not every expectation is bad, of course. Some expectations motivate you. They help you stay disciplined, responsible, and focused. But others, especially the unspoken or inherited ones, can quietly run your life without your permission. For example, maybe you feel you should always be productive, or you should always please others, or you should already have your life figured out. These ideas sound normal, but they can become heavy burdens. They leave little space for rest, creativity, or simply being human. So, one simple and powerful practice is just to notice your thoughts. You don't have to fight them or change them immediately. Just listen. Observe the tone. When your inner voice says, I should be doing more, try gently replying, I'm already doing enough for today. This small shift from judgment to understanding can change everything. Relationships and expectations. Expectations also play a big role in our relationships. We expect our friends to understand us, our partners to support us, our colleagues to cooperate. And when they don't, when reality doesn't match the story we had in our minds, we feel hurt, disappointed, or angry. But often, the problem isn't what they did or didn't do. It's that we never clearly said what we needed. We assumed they would just know. That's where misunderstandings begin. As the saying goes, unspoken expectations are premeditated resentments. It sounds harsh, but it's true. When we communicate our needs honestly and kindly, we give others a chance to meet them. When we don't, we set ourselves up for disappointment. A reflection for you. Take a quiet moment and ask yourself, what's one expectation I'm carrying that feels more like a burden than a motivation? What if I could rewrite that part of the script? What would I choose instead? Maybe it's the belief that you must always be perfect. Maybe it's the thought that success means working nonstop. Or maybe it's the idea that you should always put others before yourself. Whatever it is, just notice it. Because awareness is the first step toward change. When you start listening to your internal dialogue with compassion, you create space for a new voice, one that's not ruled by pressure or fear, but guided by kindness and understanding. And that's where true growth begins, inside the quiet conversation you have with yourself every day. Where your inner voice comes from. Most of us go through life with an ongoing conversation in our heads. That quiet voice that says things like, you can do this, or sometimes, you're not good enough. But here's something we rarely stop to ask ourselves. Why am I speaking to myself this way? Where did this voice even come from? The truth is, your inner voice didn't appear out of nowhere. It's been shaped over many years, especially by the messages you heard and felt when you were growing up. Maybe you were told things like, don't be lazy. That's not good enough. You're too sensitive. Even if nobody says those words to you anymore, they might still echo inside your mind. Over time, they become part of your internal dialogue, replaying in your own voice, so softly that you might not even notice. Limiting beliefs, the hidden stories we tell ourselves. These old messages often turn into what psychologists call limiting beliefs. They're ideas you've accepted as true, even if they're not, and they quietly influence how you see yourself and what you think is possible. For example, I'll never be confident. I'm not creative. People like me don't succeed. At first, these might sound like facts, but they're really stories, protective stories that grew from moments of fear, embarrassment, or failure. They're ways the mind tries to keep you safe by preventing you from being hurt again. But the problem is, those beliefs don't protect you anymore, they limit you. They stop you from taking chances, from exploring new paths, from believing in your potential. Sometimes these beliefs only show up in stressful moments. Imagine you're preparing for a job interview, and a voice inside says, don't mess this up. You always freeze when you're nervous. That might sound helpful, like a reminder to stay focused, but underneath, it's actually fear disguised as logic. Or maybe you tell yourself, I'm just not the kind of person who takes risks. But really, that's just an old story, a way of saying, I'm afraid to try because I don't want to fail. Reactive versus reflective inner voices. This brings us to an important idea, the difference between reactive and reflective self-talk. A reactive inner voice speaks fast. It's emotional, harsh, and often critical. It says things like, why did I say that? I'm so stupid. This always happens to me. I'll never get it right. A reflective inner voice, on the other hand, is calmer, slower, and kinder. It might say, that didn't go how I hoped, but I'm learning. That was uncomfortable, but it doesn't define me. I'm trying, and that's enough for now. The difference might sound small, just a few different words, but the emotional impact is huge. One creates shame. The other builds resilience. How to shift the voice within. So, how do we start changing that inner dialogue? How do we move from reactive to reflective self-talk? The first step is simple, notice it. Just pay attention to your inner tone. Ask yourself, is this voice kind or critical? Does it sound like someone I trust or someone I'd rather avoid? One powerful exercise is to imagine speaking to a friend the same way you speak to yourself. If you told your friend, you always mess things up, how would they feel? Probably hurt. Now ask, why do you deserve to be spoken to that way? The truth is, most of us are far kinder and more patient with others than we are with ourselves. And it doesn't have to stay that way. The language of self-compassion. Notice the words that show up in your thoughts. Words like should, always, never enough. They often carry emotional weight. I should be further along. I never get it right. This isn't good enough. These phrases rarely reflect reality. They reflect fear. Now, try replacing those words with gentler, more flexible language. I'm trying. I'm learning. I'm growing. I'm processing. So instead of saying, I always screw this up, you could say, I'm learning to handle this better each time. That small shift changes not just the words, but how you feel. It moves you from judgment to growth, from fear to confidence. Why this matters? From a language point of view, your internal dialogue is an amazing place to build emotional fluency. It's where your vocabulary meets your emotions. Every time you choose a kinder, more understanding word, you rewire a part of how you see yourself. You teach your mind that growth doesn't come from pressure, it comes from patience. So, next time you catch that critical voice whispering in your head, pause. Take a breath. And try speaking to yourself the way you would to someone you love. That simple act, changing your tone, might be the most powerful conversation you'll ever have. Understanding your inner voice. Take a moment to think about the voice inside your head, the one that talks to you all day long. How would you describe it? Is it harsh, judgmental, cold, or rigid? Or maybe it's encouraging, kind, curious, and forgiving? These words matter. Because they don't just describe what you're thinking, they reveal the tone and quality of your thoughts. They help you see whether your inner voice is helping you grow or quietly holding you back. Now, the next step is to start asking better questions. When you're feeling upset or frustrated, it's easy to ask, why am I like this? But that kind of question often leads to guilt or shame. It assumes that something is wrong with you. Instead, try asking, what am I believing about myself right now? What might I need in this moment? Do you feel the difference? The first question judges you. The second one invites you to understand yourself. It opens a door to compassion, not criticism. Changing your inner voice takes time. This kind of inner work doesn't happen overnight. Learning to listen to your thoughts, to notice your patterns, and to gently shift them, it's a long-term practice. It's not about forcing yourself to think positive or pretending that everything is fine. It's about learning to create a voice inside you that's both honest and kind, a voice that tells you the truth, but with care. When you make a mistake, that voice might say, it's okay. You're learning. When you feel afraid, it might whisper, take a breath. You've faced hard things before. That kind of self-talk doesn't ignore reality. It helps you face it with strength. So here's a question worth sitting with. What does your inner voice sound like when you're under stress? And how would that voice change if it spoke from a place of care instead of criticism? Even more importantly, what kind of inner voice do you want to develop? Not just for who you are today, but for the person you're becoming. Because your inner voice will walk with you through every challenge, every success, and every chapter of your life. Wouldn't it be worth making that voice a gentle ally instead of a harsh critic? Navigating misalignment when things don't match. Now, let's look at something deeper. What happens when your needs, wishes, and expectations don't align? Why this matters? From a language point of view, your internal dialogue is an amazing place to build emotional fluency. It's where your vocabulary meets your emotions. Every time you choose a kinder, more understanding word, you rewire a part of how you see yourself. You teach your mind that growth doesn't come from pressure, it comes from patience. So, next time you catch that critical voice whispering in your head, pause. Take a breath. Because life often becomes most painful not from failure, but from inner conflict. Sometimes, the things we need, the things we dream of, and the things we think we should do simply don't match. And when that happens, It creates confusion, frustration, or even emotional exhaustion. Let's imagine an example. Picture someone who seems successful from the outside. They have a great job, it's stable, well-paying, and respected. They've done everything that was expected. They've checked all the boxes society told them to. But deep inside, they feel empty, restless, and maybe even numb. They might think to themselves, I should be happy. I have everything people say you're supposed to want. But something doesn't feel right. Why? Because while their external expectations have been met, their inner needs have been ignored. Maybe they crave creativity, freedom, or purpose. Their wish might be to do something more meaningful, something that feels true to who they are. But their expectation says you can't leave. Responsible adults don't just walk away from stability. And so they stay torn between the life they have and the life they quietly long for. This inner conflict is what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, that uncomfortable tension you feel when your thoughts, feelings, and actions don't match. It's like saying one thing but feeling another. Like smiling on the outside while your heart quietly aches inside. The struggle between needs, wishes, and expectations. This misalignment doesn't only happen with careers. It shows up in relationships too. Think about someone who deeply needs emotional safety, someone who wants to feel heard, supported, and seen. But they stay in a relationship that doesn't provide that because they expect that love should be unconditional, or they wish that things would magically get better, or they feel they should stay for the kids. Now they're stuck, torn between what they need, what they hope for, and what they think they must do. It's like trying to walk in 3 directions at once. No matter how hard you try, you'll feel pulled apart. Finding alignment again. When your needs, wishes, and expectations are in conflict, life feels heavy. But that heaviness isn't a sign that something is broken, it's a signal that something inside you needs attention. The first step isn't to fix everything at once. It's simply to notice the gap. To ask yourself, what do I truly need right now? What do I wish for deep down? And what expectations might be standing in the way? Sometimes, just seeing the difference between those 3 things can bring enormous clarity. It helps you understand why you feel stuck, not because you're lost, but because parts of you are pulling in different directions. And once you see that, you can start to gently bring those parts back into harmony. Because when your needs, wishes, and expectations begin to align, even just a little, life starts to feel lighter, freer, and more like your own. Understanding misalignment in your life. Sometimes in life, things just don't feel right even when, on the surface, everything seems fine. You might have a good job, a stable home, and people who care about you, yet something inside feels restless or off balance. This feeling often comes from misalignment, when your needs, wishes, and expectations aren't working together. Let's break that down. Needs are what help you feel emotionally and physically safe, like rest, connection, purpose, or freedom. Wishes are your dreams, the things you hope for, like doing work you love or living a more creative life. Expectations are the rules and standards you or others set for you, like being successful, responsible, or doing the right thing. When these 3 parts don't match, life can start to feel heavy and confusing. When life looks fine but feels wrong. Imagine someone with a well-paying, respected job. On paper, they've made it. But inside, they feel empty, like something's missing. They might say, I should be happy, I have everything I ever wanted, yet they don't feel happy at all. Why does this happen? Because maybe their deeper needs, like creativity, meaning, or freedom, aren't being met. Their wish might be to do something that feels alive and fulfilling, but their expectation tells them they have to stay put because responsible people don't quit good jobs. That's how misalignment feels, like being pulled in 3 directions at once. Your heart says one thing, your head says another, and your habits pull you somewhere else entirely. How misalignment leads to burnout. When you ignore your real needs for too long, burnout often follows. You might keep pushing yourself to meet deadlines, impress others, or take care of everyone around you, even when you're exhausted. Your body whispers, slow down. But your expectations shout, keep going. You might wish for a balanced, peaceful life, but your actions stay tied to pressure and performance. Over time, this constant push creates emotional and physical exhaustion. It's not just tiredness, it's the sense of being disconnected from yourself. The culture of confusion. Part of the problem is that modern culture often mixes up wishes and expectations. We're told that if we want something badly enough, we should achieve it, that hard work guarantees success, and success guarantees happiness. But real life is more complex. Not every dream leads to the life we imagined. Not every goal brings peace. When we treat our wishes as promises rather than possibilities, disappointment becomes almost certain. Signs that something is out of sync. You can often feel misalignment through emotions like frustration, guilt, or confusion. For example, you feel stuck, unable to move forward but afraid to step back. You keep thinking, I should be grateful, but I'm not. You say, I thought this would make me happy, but it doesn't. These are not failures, they're signals. They're ways your inner self tells you something important is being ignored. From the outside, everything might look fine. But on the inside, something isn't being nourished. Your outer life may look stable, but your inner world feels unbalanced. How to start rebalancing? When you sense that misalignment, pause and reflect. Ask yourself, what need of mine isn't being met right now? What wish am I quietly holding inside? What expectation might be too heavy or unrealistic? You don't have to find all the answers right away. Even just asking the questions is powerful. It helps you see the pattern instead of being trapped inside it. Once you see clearly, you can start to make gentle changes. Maybe it's setting a boundary, saying no, or giving yourself time to rest. These small steps bring your life back into rhythm, one decision at a time. From a language perspective, this idea of misalignment is also a rich opportunity for language growth. Notice how English expresses these emotional contrasts with phrases like, at odds with my values are at odds with my job. A final reflection. Take a moment to think about your own life. Is there an area where your needs, wishes, and expectations feel out of sync? If yes, what's one small thing you could do to bring them closer together? It doesn't need to be dramatic. Even naming what feels off can be the first step toward change. Because once you see the misalignment clearly, you gain the power to realign. You can stop living someone else's script and start writing your own, one that's honest, compassionate, and true to who you really are. Reclaiming alignment, conscious intention, and self-kindness. After realizing that your needs, wishes, and expectations don't always match, the next step is learning how to bring them back into balance. This process, what we might call reclaiming alignment, isn't about fixing yourself or chasing perfection. It's about making small, conscious choices that help you live more honestly, more gently, and more intentionally. True alignment begins with awareness. It starts the moment you pause and actually listen to yourself, to your thoughts, your emotions, and even your body. Ask yourself, what do I need right now? What am I hoping for? What am I expecting of myself or others? These simple questions can open a doorway to self-understanding. Most of us move through our days on autopilot, answering messages, meeting deadlines, caring for others, without ever checking in with how we truly feel. But self-awareness gives you the power to slow down and make intentional choices instead of reacting automatically. The role of boundaries. Once you start to notice the areas of your life that feel out of sync, the next important step is setting boundaries. Boundaries are not about pushing people away. They're about protecting your energy and creating space for what really matters to you. In the beginning, setting boundaries can feel uncomfortable, maybe even selfish. Especially if you've spent years trying to please others or living up to impossible expectations. But boundaries are actually one of the kindest things you can offer yourself. They're your way of saying, this is what I need to be well. This is what helps me grow. Setting a boundary might look like saying no to something that drains you, taking a night off from work emails, asking for help when you're overwhelmed, making time for rest, reflection, or creativity. Each boundary you create is a small act of self-respect, a signal to yourself and the world that your needs matter too. Over time, these small choices add up. They realign your life with your values and help you feel grounded again. Living with conscious intention. You don't need to change everything at once. Real transformation rarely happens in one big leap. It happens through small, consistent actions that reflect what's truly important to you. Maybe you decide to start journaling once a week to explore your thoughts and wishes. Maybe you choose one day each weekend for quiet time or family connection. Maybe you give yourself permission to rest without guilt. These aren't just new habits, they're acts of intention. They remind your heart and mind that you are choosing your life, not just drifting through it. When you make conscious choices, even simple ones, you start to feel more in control, more centered, and more connected to yourself. The language of empowerment. From a language point of view, this is a perfect moment to notice how certain verbs can make you feel stronger and more in control. Verbs like reclaim, to take back your time, energy, and focus. Realign, to bring your life back into balance. Reset, to start fresh after burnout or confusion. Commit, to follow through on your intentions. Embrace, to accept yourself and your journey with warmth. Nurture, to care for your growth with patience and love. You can use these words to describe your process. I will reclaim my time. I'm learning to realign my priorities. I want to reset my boundaries. I'm ready to nurture myself instead of criticizing myself. Notice how these sentences give you a sense of control and movement. They shift your focus from what's wrong to what's possible. Even the future tense, I will, I'm going to, I plan to, carries power. When you say, I will choose to honor my needs, you're not just describing a plan. You're making a promise to yourself in the present moment. You're saying, I'm ready to act differently. The grammar of growth. This stage of growth also offers a chance to practice some deeper language patterns, like using gerunds and infinitives to express your process. For example, I'm learning to slow down. I've started taking time for myself. I'm focusing on being more patient. These forms help you describe ongoing growth, things you're practicing, not just achieving. And that's important because reclaiming alignment is not a one-time goal. It's a continuous journey. Bringing it all together. To reclaim your alignment is to reclaim your life. It's about listening to yourself with honesty, responding with kindness, and acting with intention. You won't always get it right, and that's okay. The goal isn't perfection. It's progress. It's about learning to treat yourself like someone you genuinely care about. So, take a breath. Slow down. Ask yourself, what small step could I take today to honor my needs? What boundary could I strengthen? What intention feels most true to me right now? Each time you ask, listen closely. Your inner voice might be quiet at first, but it's wise, and it knows what you need to feel whole again. Because reclaiming alignment is really about coming home to yourself, one conscious, compassionate choice at a time. Living in alignment with intention and kindness. You might say, I'm learning to listen to myself, or I'm committing to setting boundaries, or I'm choosing to prioritize rest. These kinds of sentences use verbs that show growth, choice, and ongoing action. They remind us that reclaiming alignment isn't something you do once and forget about. It's a journey, a slow, evolving process of coming back to yourself again and again. The importance of self-kindness. As you take these steps toward alignment, remember one essential truth: be kind to yourself along the way. Change doesn't move in a straight line. There will be days when you feel strong and focused, and others when you feel tired or unsure. That's completely normal. When setbacks happen, and they will, try to speak to yourself with the same care you would give to a close friend. Instead of saying, I failed again, you might say, I'm learning and every effort matters. That simple shift in language turns self-criticism into self-compassion. It softens the pressure and gives you space to grow. This nurturing tone builds resilience, helping you keep moving forward without shame or frustration. Small steps toward alignment. So, here's a question to carry with you. What small, intentional action can you take today to realign with your true needs, wishes, or expectations? It doesn't have to be big or dramatic. Maybe it's taking a few slow, deep breaths and grounding yourself in the present moment. Maybe it's writing down one boundary you'd like to set, something that will protect your energy or peace of mind. Maybe it's reminding yourself right now that your worth is not defined by what you produce. Whatever it looks like, each small act of awareness and kindness is a way of coming home to yourself. Every time you honor your needs, you're building a more balanced and peaceful inner world. Living in alignment isn't about perfection. It's about authenticity, courage, and grace, showing up as you truly are, even when life feels messy or uncertain. It's about embracing your complexity, respecting your own rhythm, and walking forward with intention and care. A moment of reflection. As we come to the close of this reflection, I invite you to pause for a moment, maybe even take a deep breath and simply sit with everything we've explored today. Understanding your needs, wishes, and expectations isn't quick or simple work. It takes patience. It takes curiosity. And most of all, it takes kindness toward yourself. So before you move on with your day, let's reflect gently together. You might even grab a journal or just hold these questions quietly in your mind. When was the last time you truly checked in with yourself? Not just in passing, but with genuine attention. What needs have been quietly waiting for your recognition? Which wishes have been softly whispering inside you, maybe too fragile or too bold to say aloud? And what expectations from your family, society, or your own inner critic have you been trying to live up to, even when they've started to feel heavy or limiting? It's okay if you don't have all the answers right now. You don't need to rush clarity. Sometimes, asking the question is already the first step toward transformation. Because awareness is where change begins. Returning to the power of language. You might find it helpful to return to this reflection from time to time, to reread or re-listen slowly, letting the ideas settle. Language is more than just words. It's a tool for understanding yourself. When you use words like reclaim, realign, limiting beliefs, or caught in the middle, you're not just expanding your vocabulary, you're naming real experiences. Naming things gives them shape, and when you give something shape, you can begin to change it. That's the power of words. They help you translate your inner world into understanding. So, as you move forward, carry this simple truth with you. You're allowed to grow at your own pace. You are allowed to realign, reset, and begin again. Every small act of awareness is a step toward living with greater harmony, clarity, and compassion for yourself and for the life you are creating. Podcast closing script: understanding your inner landscape. They're not just words, they're keys to expressing the complex landscape of your inner life. As you reflect, I invite you to share what you're learning. Talk with someone you trust, a friend, a mentor, maybe even a fellow learner. Conversations like these can deepen your insight, open new perspectives, and remind you of something essential: you are not alone in navigating this journey. The tension between needs, wishes, and expectations is something every human being wrestles with in their own way. It's part of being alive, part of growing, part of becoming. A gentle challenge. Before we close, I'd like to leave you with a gentle challenge for the week ahead. Take some time to observe your inner dialogue, that quiet, constant stream of thoughts and emotions moving through your mind each day. Notice when your needs are being met. Notice when your wishes light up your imagination. And notice when expectations start to feel like a heavy script you're struggling to follow. When you become aware of these moments, try to respond not with judgment, but with curiosity and kindness. Ask yourself, what is this feeling trying to tell me? How can I honor this part of myself today? This practice isn't about changing everything overnight. It's about small, intentional steps that help you live a little more authentically, a little more gently, and a little more in tune with what truly matters. Because each of those steps brings you closer to yourself. Each moment of awareness helps you reclaim your personal power, your resilience, and your capacity for transformation. Closing message. Thank you for tuning in to Mr. English Lab. I hope this episode has sparked meaningful reflection and given you not only language tools, but also a deeper way to articulate your own inner journey. If you found this conversation helpful, please consider sharing it with someone who might benefit or leaving a comment to share your thoughts. Your voice, your reflections, and your experiences, they all matter deeply. Until next time, keep listening to your inner voice, keep asking thoughtful questions, and above all, keep being kind to yourself. Because learning to understand your needs, wishes, and expectations is one of the greatest gifts you can ever give yourself. And that gift? It keeps growing as long as you nurture it. Take care and see you soon.